I want to say that as a guy, you're trying to show what's going on, and you aren't listened to. You were told you got to man up. When you have to do extreme things to defend yourself because you are actually being harmed, and people are blowing you off and trying to give you advice that it's great advice in the right circumstances, but these circumstances aren't the circumstances where that advice does anything. If 300 people tell me I need to love myself, that means that's 300 people who, although they intend well, have made a very bad assumption. I do love myself. That's not what this video is about. There's a guy in some of my videos that I very rarely talk about. I'm sorry about the hoarseness of my voice. I got pretty steamed yesterday or the day before. It was pretty loud. I got an ear infection. I'm not feeling all that great. No, I don't have the super flu. This is all from all those of you who have seen the videos over the last few days. You know what it's from. It's from me yelling, and also from me basically locking myself up in a tiny area, um, and smoking a lot of cigarettes and screaming a lot. So yeah, that's where the ear infection comes from. I don't like the military. There are people that are in the military that I care about very much. Um, Zach Metcalf, he's in a few of my videos, he's mentioned, and you notice I always paint him as the bad guy. Well, that's because at one point in time he was, but people change. You notice that when I tell you guys stories about Dylan Bauer, it's not so much what a fucking dick he was all the goddamn time. It's how much he's changed, how much he turned into a human being instead of just a bully who cared. I don't know what he cared about in high school other than football and picking on me. Here's where the small world comes in. Little Jay, the guy that I was telling a story about earlier, a few stories actually, the woman that he tried to murder, well, she's with Dylan Bauer. He's a pretty fucking nice guy. He didn't stay that asshole that he was. He apologized to me years ago. You got no idea how much that means to me. That is repenting, motherfuckers. After this Natalie thing, he has stopped on multiple occasions to help me. You remember when I told you about that phone that I lost? The one that was full of all that, the very first one that was full of all of that evidence from prior to Natalie dying on forward. All of those stories that I told were true stories, and that phone proved all of it. Those text messages, those screenshots, the things that were in that phone that once it was gone, I was never able to get back. And I have fought hard to keep the evidence myself and try to make doubles of it and try to get it sent to where it needs to go and try to make a copy for safekeeping. My safekeeping copies, I've got one copy of safekeeping stuff that's at Molly Smith's house, and I got one that's at Miss Peach's house. As you well know, me and Miss Peaches are not on good terms. I do love her very much. but she fucked up. This video is about military design, though. Owen Johnson, he wanted to become a pilot, and as much as I hate war, the first thing I thought to myself is, man, if he gets that eye surgery and makes it so that he can see perfect, and he gets to become a fighter pilot like he wants to, like, fuck, I've seen all sorts of creepy shit on TV. So one day I'm watching this thing where they're talking about mock flight. That's not pretend flight. That's Mach speeds in excess of the speed of sound. And what happens to fighter pilots who have to eject at high speed, and you're not a whole person after that if you're lucky enough to survive it. So, and that's right at the sound barrier, just a little bit past. And while I was watching that show, I did what I usually do when I see mechanical shit like that. I come up with ideas of, hey, how are we going to do this? How would we protect Owen Johnson? I'm thinking of someone in specific at this point in time. I mean, I'm seeing the show there, and of course, Owen flew C-130s, I believe, or possibly the C-10. I can't remember, but he decided he really liked that much more better anyway. And he did get his surgery, and his eyesight did become 20/20. So if he had wanted to pursue it, he could have actually become a fighter pilot. While I was watching this show, there's the politics involved that can get my loved ones killed and your loved ones killed. And Owen is a loved one. Let me tell you how many times Owen Johnson was ever mean to me. A grand total of zero, never in the history of ever. I mean, that dude he was a pretty nice guy, at least to me. So I designed a cockpit that you can eject at Mach speeds. I took information that I had learned from books and from videos about um, like different airplane types from 1903 on up to modern day. And I really, really dig that stuff. And I figured out how to basically by looking at a Kleenex box and also looking at tension brakes, not as in a brake like on a car, but a piece of line or a piece of an object or a string like test line. If it's 7-pound test, it's supposed to break at 7 pounds of pressure, right? Is that correct? If it's 40-pound test line, it's supposed to be able to hold up to 40 pounds before breaking. And I remember I was looking at a Kleenex box one day, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? If you have to eject this thing that I designed at Mach speeds, I designed some specific aerofoils around it and stuff like that, so that as soon as it separates evenly and stays on trajectory, hopefully. But you don't want to entirely rely on that. You do want to have a mechanical gyroscope. This is very important. An electronic gyroscope can fail. You always want a mechanical backup, always. But when you're talking about Mach speeds, I mean, just a tiny little bit can fucking throw you in any which direction. That's a lot of G's. So you need something that can withstand a lot of G's. One way that you can avert that is by the idea of putting a parachute at the end of the piece of test line. And that parachute is attached to another parachute. When it breaks, when that break happens, it allows out the next parachute. And you all have them on a certain amount of pressure that they're going to break at. When you're going Mach speeds, it's not going to take much to break those parachutes. But also, with each parachute that breaks off, you're you're losing momentum, but also that parachute is behind you. It's creating drag. It is forcing your nose to stay stable and stay forward. Also, because it's an ejectable cockpit and it's designed aerodynamically to be able to do what it is that you need to be able to do to separate. We're also talking about full enclosure. Rather than sitting in it like you normally would, you need to be positioned so that you are laying down on your stomach, facing with your head forward and your feet back. That way you can withstand more G's of pressure. Up to 12 times the amount of G's is what some of their studies said, and then later they redid them and said, well, according to their measurements and our measurements, it's about 9 G's. But then you think about a lot of the other innovations there that were meant for the same purpose that they didn't have on these later variants they tested. So you never know. It might have been 12 G's. But then what you're talking about is having a control system that your control system can be used to control the larger airplane, and it can also be used to control what you're inside of, which is basically, it would, I guess it'd kind of look like a manta ray, sort of. But the reason for this is because it can remain streamlined along with the fuselage. And all you need is small ports coming out, and you can actually have it so that every angle of your vehicle is all coming forward to your eyeballs, and you have them so that each part around you, underneath, above, each one has a particular place within the field of view. And each one of these sets will place a slightly offset piece in its field of vision. That way, everything that you're seeing is 3D. But also, let's say everything in front of the vehicle you want to be able to see as if it's in front of you. But then you want to be able to see what's on top of you. So what you want to do is have it so the one on top of you slightly overlaps its field of vision with the one in front of you. And that way you can add that to the top piece. Same sides, left and right. You can also do the same thing with the rear. And for me, I'd want to make a little strip at the bottom for the rear so that it was actually a separate entity. But you could literally make it so that basically you're looking at all 360 degrees of a globe, because you're taking all 360 degrees and basically squishing it all up into this little thing in the front. Now, if you did that so that the very rear of your vehicle had just a tiny bit of overlap, if something was right on your tail, you would see it all the way around the edge, because all the way around the edge is actually a tiny pinhole vision out the back. There wouldn't be any electronics. This is an emergency thing. I hate fucking voodoo electronics. I hate batteries. If you can do it with just a piece of plastic that is bendy, and each one of these plastic things goes to a lens in its designated area, you can remain there in your position, chest down, hands up, have an air cushion in the front of you and an air cushion in the back of you to help control G's and also to help pump the blood where it needs to go, very similar to a G suit. But also you're talking about something that is fully enclosed now. Because it is something that is fully enclosed, it's not going to tear your limbs off. I was thinking about that because of Owen Johnson. Because even though I may not agree with U.S. politics, hell, as far as the politics go, I might even agree with the other guy. I am not obligated as a human being to agree with evil. I am not obligated as a human being to agree with evil people. I am not obligated as a human being to ignore my moral compass just because you want to kill people elsewhere. I am not morally obligated to do that, and I won't do it. But at the same time, if Owen Johnson's going to be ordered over there to shoot people, whether I like those people or not, whether I agree with him being over there or not. I want him to come home. I love Owen. He's always been good to me. I haven't seen him since high school. But he was never mean to me, not once. He never had a harsh word to say to me. The one time that he got something wrong, it was right after I got into that fight with Zach Metcalf. And we'll come back to that later because Zach Metcalf also rates up there among good men in my personal life. After we got into that fight, I didn't realize it'd been his first fight. And although I only hit him once, I hit him square enough to get some blood all over my shirt. And after that, he was a perfect gentleman. Every time I spoke to him, courteous, prim, and proper. He stood upright every time that he spoke to me. He spoke to me like I was a human being every time he spoke to me after that. Every single time. And since then, I have never heard of Zach Metcalf ever doing anything that was dishonest. I have never heard of him doing anything that was mean or cruel to another human being. And Zach did share some personal information that's not for all of you to hear, but I'm going to give you the gist of it. There was violence that he had to deal with prior to me that he couldn't do anything about. He just had to take it. And he swore he was not going to be that kind of a human being. And he felt bad for what he had done. And you know what? That means the fucking world to me. Just like when Dylan Bauer did it. When I lost my phone down there in Colorado, and it was full of all that evidence, and I spent all that time looking for it, and all these people are calling, and I'm saying, please don't call it right now. I'm nowhere near where it is. If you guys keep on calling it, please you stop. You've called it 10 times in the last 5 minutes. I'm asking you to stop. You're going to run out the battery, and I won't be able to find it when I find someone that does have a phone I can use. But you know what, Dylan Bauer, he's got kids with him, and he's in a minivan, and he stops by the side of the road over there by fucking Sedgwick, and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm looking for my phone." He says, "Do you need some help?" I said, "Well, I don't know where it's at, dude. You got kids?" He said where he was going, and you know, I really could have used his help finding it, and those kids especially. I mean, that's six more eyes looking for it. In that particular case, I did turn the help down because, well, specifically because of the kids. That doesn't mean it's the kids' fault. I just, they were going somewhere, and, after they were doing that, I did let them know that if they had time after where they were going, that, yeah, you still see me out here, help me find it. It really would have been a lot easier if I'd have been able to go out there with a telephone to all of the places that I had been and just call myself. But I didn't have that when I went to those places. All these people that I went to for help, like I asked Jace Jepson because he had a phone. I was asking him if he could drive me to Sedgwick and call my phone while we're down there so that I could check all the places that I stopped. Out back at Lucille's, I stopped there, and I was over at the dispensary. I stopped there. I was out at the busted down gas station that's across the street from Lucy's, and I was out at a field north of town. And I went to all those places, and I couldn't find it. Given how much effort I made, I probably could have said, "Hey, Dylan, Could you drive me around for about 20 minutes and we'll stop at these places and call my phone? It probably would have taken 30 minutes, but and then when you lose something like that and you've been spending all that time trying to get someone to listen and look at it, it was losing that phone that sent me into the panic attack that resulted in me trying to chase down Officer Hahn. I had already gone to him the day before with Molly Smith. Molly Smith didn't know much about what was going on. She knew what kind of a person I am. She'd known me for years, and she wasn't afraid. And they counted for a lot. They counted a lot more than the people who were actually witnesses to these things, because Molly Smith was not too scared to go in. She was not too scared to speak up. She's made calls to lawyers and places and all sorts of things like that too. The cop said that nobody would help me, probably because of the way that I act. But the fact is, there have been a lot of people who have tried, who have made these calls. Each one of these people doing it by themselves. That's the part that's difficult to explain to each of them. Like, if you go in there, let's say Mandy Hughes and Alyssa Rainwater, let's say they both go in there and say, hey, this is actually happening. See, when you're disabled, you're not allowed to call when you're called mentally ill, you're not allowed to call the place on yourself, because they're not going to investigate it. They're not supposed to. But if you have a guardian present or a witness who is there, then they can start something. That's when they're allowed to. That's the difference between you going in to make a police report and me going in to make a police report. And when it results in me being harmed, all these cops can fall back on the fact that they abused protocol in a fashion that they should not have. The way they treat a mentally ill person who is alone is completely different than the way that they treat a mentally ill person who is with someone. Usually, a mentally ill person by themselves is automatically treated hostile. That is automatically the first conclusion and the first thing that they're going to jump on. And the first excuse they're going to make as soon as the words coming out of your mouth are, the police broke the law. Holy shit, clear the fucking room. You can't say that to cops. Especially when the cop that did it is one of their friends and coworkers. I should have been allowed to file a police report against Will and Lola Tai. And all of these witnesses, you listen to that shit. Yeah, I really did go to these places. And some of these people went to those places with me. But they didn't go in with me. See, that's the thing. That's the real play on words there. Miss Beaches and Raja said that people went in with me. No, nobody ever went in with me. When did you actually go in with me to talk to the cops? And that's the thing, is that the 3 times that we kind of sort of almost made an attempt, one of those times it was that she didn't realize that, yeah, when I say that I need you to listen to me one-on-one, that's because when you and your brother are both talking at the same time, I am doing my best to separate one of you from the other. If there is 2 people talking at once, I don't hear either one of you. What I hear is garbled sounds. If you're talking and the TV's blaring, I hear garbled sounds. If a baby is crying in the background and you're talking, I hear a baby crying in the background and you talking. A baby crying is different. A baby crying, believe it or not, is one of the first melodic tones. It's not a bunch of weird mouth movements and throat movements that you have to assemble in a complicated fashion in order to form a word. And I know I get on these things and I get off topic and I don't remember what the video was even about because just a few minutes into it, I'll remember a few details about something else and I'll start talking about those details. That they are important, but I need to stay on the main line of the story. And little bits and pieces that you want filled in, I can do later, or you can go back and listen to my other videos. But I'm not exactly doing so hot right now, am I? You see, that's OCD. Couldn't it be? No, it's not. That's the thing with Shannon Alvarado. She has alcohol-induced ADHD. It's not OCD. Now, she does have OCD, and and this is a very autistic trait, which is what leads me to believe that she might be autistic. Um, she always buys literally the same thing when she goes to the store every single time. She also might do that because it's the only stuff that her daughter eats or will eat, or the only thing that her daughter doesn't throw around the house. I don't know. That's one of them questions I didn't ask. Now, there's a lot of stuff for the military that I've designed, and I absolutely disagree with the military. I disagree with every single soldier on planet Earth, but I want them all to go home to their families. If that's not going to happen, I do hope that my family comes home first. Do I consider Zach Metcalf family? No. Do I consider Owen Johnson family? No. But they're good men and I love them both. I've designed body armor. I've designed weaponry. I've designed a lot of that stuff. When I was much younger, believe it or not, after all the bullying that I took from people like Dylan Bauer and Zach Metcalf, like I really had a lot of hate. And it wasn't just them, it was the fucking clickiness of this fucking town. The moment that I moved into this town, it was automatically assumed that I was some sort of creep or weirdo, or many people thought that because my mother was a sexual deviant who's on cocaine, that I would probably follow suit, especially since Eric really seemed like a chip off the old wagon. Eric, this is a small town where a lot of people, they're very conservative. They wear, let me show you the kind of shirts that a lot of the kids that I went to high school with wore. That guy Clint that I was telling you about, good man, he really is. His wife, Leslie, is a good woman. That is no joke. I've known them both for a lot of years. There's shit we disagree on, but fuck it, they're still good to me. You can hear Clint talking in one of my videos a while back. While I was recording it, he came up to me with some jerky. It was it was some pretty fucking good jerky. So you can actually hear Clint's voice. And you guys hear how I talk to Leslie, and you all have heard why. I don't blame her. I just don't think that she quite understands the situation. Matter of fact, I'm certain that she doesn't. Her and her sister, I believe they came from Denver. They're twins, and they were very pretty, and of course, everybody had a crush on them. When Josh and Jackie and all of the Martindales moved here again, these are new people, but they're drop dead gorgeous. You've got when they all blossomed and all was said and done, the most physically attractive one, in my personal opinion, is Justine. That's according to your measurements and your accounts. What most of you find attractive. And then there's Jackie. And then there's Josh. I mean, every girl in town had a crush on Josh. He actually was in a pair of underwear outside of the Westminster Mall on a giant ass fucking billboard for a couple of years. Those of you who live in Westminster and drove by the Westminster Mall would probably recognize Josh immediately if you saw him. Oh, and by the way, he married a Maxim magazine model. So there's that. When I was younger, I had so much hate from that. And also from being raped and molested and beaten and fucking drugged and abused over and over and over and over again. Everybody getting away with it. Once you have that title, anyone can do anything that they want to you at any point in time. Anyone. And the only protection that you have from that is someone who loves you there in person to protect you from it. Because it is the title itself that is my disability. Because your assumptions that are tied in with that title, the things that you think should be done over your paranoia of people with that title, you allow unconstitutional and immoral things to happen to people with that title. Things that you wouldn't want happening to you. Things that are illegal for all of you by law. But it's not illegal to do those things to me or anyone else with that tag. When I got out of high school, I wanted to join the military, and not because I wanted to protect America. But you know what? I wasn't allowed in the military because I got Tourette syndrome and ADHD and a bunch of shit like that. I got a list as long as my arm. Most of that list that I was diagnosed with because of the repercussions of giving such a small child such a large quantity of drugs in such a short amount of time. It fucks your brain up permanently in many cases. Not to mention the abuse. Some of these places, they're good people. Some of these foster homes are good foster homes. And a good foster home stays a good foster home. It stays that way. It's as good of a foster home for me as it would be if my sister visited it a year later, or my little brother visited it 2 years later. Good people who are foster parents are still good foster parents and good people years later. Gary Jepson was a foster parent years ago. He quit being a foster parent over 20 years ago. And he is still the same good man that he always was. But then there's the thing where you guys have these cop outs like, oh, well, everybody is at risk when they're by themselves. Everybody is at a higher risk when they're by themselves. That is a cop out. Because you need to look at who it is that people target. Who is it in specific that these people are targeting? Are they targeting everyone? No, they're not. There are certain groups that are targeted more than others. When it comes to police wanting somebody they can murder and get away with it, if you can call them mentally ill or try to convince the public that they are a drug addict, you get away with it. What are your public biases? That all homeless people are fucking drug addicts who won't get a job and they deserve to die anyway. That seems to be the general consensus of the American public. And that stands for a lot of you who actually disagree with that as well, because you're not doing anything about it. When you've got 5,000 people voting for something that's wrong, yeah, that's tough to beat when all the rest of the people don't want to vote at all. And I'm not talking about voting like American democracy, because that's not voting and it's not democracy. It's just haggard bullshit to keep you fucking busy. You guys, you want to take a break from all of your problems. It's just unfortunate that the break from all of your problems is drama. Uh, but when I became homeless, well, actually, that's not true. When I was living in Lodgepole with Chris Stegeman and he was method out of his goddamn gourd every fucking day, and Jason Vogt, who was not allowed at our house, was still coming over, he was one of the first people I wanted to get a protection order against. He was just a fucking dick. But he was supplying Chris Stegeman with his meth, so fuck it. That's what I had to deal with. Didn't have much choice in it. All right, I can't remember why I brought up the place in Lodgepole. You know, I should state that despite all of the shit that I've been saying about Chris, even though that stuff is true, Chris did do a lot for me. He has. When we moved into that place in Lodgepole, and by the way, his dad too. If Chris hadn't borrowed his dad's tools to come clear out all the fucking years and years of stuff that was in our pipes, we wouldn't have had a toilet. We wouldn't have had running water. We wouldn't have had nothing. Me and Chris worked hard on getting that house at least decent enough that the weather wasn't coming in and we could use the toilet and the shower. But that's that ADHD thing again. A lot of us with ADHD, or ADOS as I like to call it, attention deficit shiny, we just remember too much at once. A lot of us have stuttering problems. That happens when you've got four stories in your head that are all related and they all want to come out of your mouth at once. It's tough to explain that while you guys have one train of thought, I have at least six going on at all points in time. Right now, I'm trying to focus on talking to you. I'm trying to focus on all of these interconnecting points that are all related, and it's a big, complicated mess. But just it's confusing extremely quickly. And then the more stressed out I am, the less likely it is that my words are going to fit together. I might connect two sentences that are both going on simultaneously in my head. And one of them is about a particular situation with one person in that scenario. And another one I'm thinking about while I'm talking about this one, I'm thinking about somebody where their situation was actually interrelated with this other person. And I'm thinking about how that ties in with this while I'm telling you about this. So then I've got both of these things and I've got to try to keep them straight. I got to try to keep them trains on the same track. If you throw something on the tracks, it's going to be difficult. and we're going to have to take some time, and we're going to have to clean up the mess real quick. We're going to have to fix some trains. We're going to have to put the tracks back together, and we're going to have to get back on the road. But I can't do this by myself when I am constantly having everything that can possibly be thrown in front of me thrown in front of me. This train is not going to go anywhere. There is no way for a train to go forward when the tracks are gone and you're eating up all the tracks ahead of it. And people are like, hey man, just fix the engine and go forward. Yeah, without tracks, you're probably going to dig into the rocks and screw up the ties and have to start all over again with pulling everything back up onto the ties. If you got to go 1,000 miles and you have to do that every 60 to 90 feet, because that's probably about as far as you'd come off of it, and then you'd stop. You wouldn't even be able to build up speed. You'd just basically coast off the edge and get stuck. But then it might take you a day or two to get that thing back on the rails, and you go another 60 feet. Once you've done it a few times, you might have it down to an art, and you can get that train back on them railroad ties with no tracks on them, in 2 hours. Who knows? But then we're also talking about the fact that we're not talking about just two trains of thought, and we're not talking about two trains of thought that are even related in some cases. Like right now, what's going through my head is the aerodynamics and the tissue feature and the breakaway feature of that thing that I designed when I thought Owen Johnson was going to become a fighter pilot. It's because I wanted him to come home. And then the other thing that I got going on is that I can't see my loved ones. And all of these situations where I was punished for trying to speak up, I was punished for trying to show the truth. And now I am so incredibly afraid of going to anyone for help. I know they'll make promises that they'll help me the way that I need, but then later when they don't, and this happens consistently over and over and over again, and that's the problem with your assumptions and your misunderstandings. Look at the stuff that these people got mad and angry and screamed and shouted at me for. Look at how trivial those things are in comparison with what I have to deal with every day. People's assumptions. People who already know how screwed up my back is, but then that doesn't register to them when they want help. Or people who expect a lot more out of me than I'm capable of giving. And then, I got to document the things that have happened and how I feel emotionally. And it'd be nice if I had a good friend in person who I could vent this stuff to. Everybody tells me the same thing when I try to vent. When I try to vent in real life, say what's going on, I get the I don't care. I don't care. How does it feel when somebody that you love, when you're trying to tell them about the abuse that you're going through, how does it feel when they say, I don't care? Joanna told me, Sean, don't kill yourself. This is over the situation. This is before Natalie was killed. Joanna Taylor Smith, this woman that later did some pretty screwed up shit, and this lady who also people pretended didn't exist. She was supposedly one of my altered accounts. Ooh. Of course, to go through my conversations with Brandon Ratner, I ask him, is Joanna Taylor Smith a real person? He says yes. Now, the other thing is that I don't believe that Brandon Ratner is a fucking coward. So, He'll step up in court if he's allowed. It's a good thing. So that you guys can't pretend that, number one, you can't pretend that I pretended that I was him, or that I somehow dubbed my voice and made myself sound like someone else and said, oh, I'm Brandon Ratner now. I'm going to play that into this little synthesizer thing that goes through the computer. And, people explain to me how that works and that they believe I'm this and that and the other and manufacturing this and making up that. And I assure you, I am a fucking moron on computers. Give me computer games. Oh my God, yes. Superior to any platform on the planet. No doubts. I'll take computers over Xbox, PlayStation, any of that, any day. When it comes to escaping from reality, yes. So if you guys try to pretend that Brandon Ratner doesn't exist, he's not going to do what it is that Joanna Taylor Smith did, which is allow these people to do whatever they wanted to me. I believe given the opportunity to do so, Brandon would for certainly speak up in court and show that he is who he is. I am certain that he would present his ID, if asked to do so, and his birth certificate, if need be, for the courts. He did some stuff that was fucked up and screwed up. Not because he's a fucked up and screwed up person, but because he's got his own personal problems, just like Peaches, just like Mandy Hughes, just like Alyssa Rainwater. They do have their own problems. Now, for the time being, I do call them excuses. These are the things that people told me as their reasons for not going in with me. And these people continually rescheduled with me, some of them, to go in and make these police reports. But then when it's time for them to keep their word, they can't again for some reason. They're giving me money in between as much as they can. That was great. Alyssa Rainwater and her mom came up with $85. $85, mostly in ones. Y'all got no idea how great that made me feel. She brought me some monsters. I got to meet her daughter, one of her daughters anyway. They all deserved better than this. They really did. They should have been allowed to speak back then. There shouldn't have been all of this hatred and animosity that came forward because I had to show the truth. That should have been done in court, like you promised, like we rescheduled multiple occasions over months and months. I also tried to do that with Carmia, aka Cara Rogers. Like, hey, what about your friends in Colorado that were going to help out? Did they really exist or what, Cara Rogers? Do those people actually exist that you were pretending were going to help me? Or were you full of shit because you never got a hold of them? They never showed up. You guys want to treat me like everything is my fault because I made mistakes. I'm telling you, all of us made mistakes. I just happen to be the easiest to scapegoat, and thus the easiest to get away with victimizing. I'm the easiest to prevent from showing the truth. If we call Sean mentally ill, then we won't get in trouble. It seems to be the mentality. See, people don't love the way that I do. I don't know Zach Metcalf that well. I know that he was an asshole to me in high school, and he was fucking tiny. Then he was an asshole, because when he was a tiny little fucker, like, shit, I barely knew he existed. And Chapel, it's small enough that the junior high school and the high school are attached to each other. I moved here my freshman year, second freshman year. They made me redo my freshman year here because most of my credits from Washington State didn't count. Washington State history does not count. Who knew? Also, that was the first year that Lincoln High School had Team Gold. I guess they changed the name of it every year, but this is basically 3 core classes for the super smart kids, and this is at a minority school in Tacoma, Washington. Like I said, my dad lives in a nice house in the very fucking smack dab in the center of the goddamn ghetto. No joke. Um, Ghettos there are completely different from the ghettos in California and shit, because the ghettos in Washington State, there's still trees all over the fucking place. It's still half forest. Half of Seattle, if not more, is forest. Possibly 3/4 of it. I mean, there is a lot of forest. You got an apartment complex here with 20 buildings. You got one here with 20 buildings. And then you got enough forest land that if you were to clear it, you could probably put up 80 buildings, but you're just going to leave it there because it's fun to play in. It really is. Most beautiful place I've ever been. Washington State has more terrain types than every terrain type that I have ever seen in my life, in real life, I have seen in Washington State. But you also see how I bounce from subject to subject to subject. Sometimes it brings back a happy memory, and I do want to share that happy memory. Thinking about Washington State is a happy memory. There's a lot of happy memories that turn into sad and hurtful memories, and you don't want to remember them. You don't want the things that remind you of those things anymore. You don't want it. There's some experiences with Jamie that were some of the most wonderful of my life. There were experiences with Natalie that were some of the most wonderful of my life. Guess what? I never had sex with either one. Imagine that. When Natalie held my hand on Virginia Beach, I was so scared. Y'all got no idea why that felt so good, why it was so comforting to me. Because I was fucking scared shitless. I've been victimized my whole life because of a fucking title. Title that I didn't deserve. They just needed to stop putting drugs in me and let me see my loved ones. That's it. That's not too fucking complicated. I was a fucking kid when I went into the system. A very young kid. I was 4 years old when I went into the system. I was 6 years old when I was sent to the first institution. The first institution. Yeah, get that. Get bent. But after becoming homeless, all of these inventions, all of this stuff from my youth, all of this fake bullshit that I had pounded into me my entire life about the military and about what they fight for and about what you're supposed to do about bullies and what you're supposed to do about this and that and the other. And I just went, you know what, I'm done with all of it. So I'm 21 years of age. I'm living with Chris Stegeman. Chris can't stay off the fucking meth. Those assholes can't stop coming over to the house because Chris is wanting his meth. This is while he owned the AK-47. And probably shortly thereafter is when he traded the AK-47 for $50 worth of meth. When I say that my firearms were stolen from that house, I mean that my firearms were stolen from that house. Somebody stole my artwork in that house too. Now that's fucking flattery. They stole a painting off of a table that I was still in the process of painting. Isn't that weird? But it was in that house that I decided that I wanted to be a better person. It's not that I was a bad person before that. It's that while I was there, I decided I was going to make a conscious effort in every single one of my decisions to be more like Jesus. Isn't that funny? Yeah, I decided that I'd spent enough of my life being victimized because I didn't have anyone there for me. And somebody had to fucking stick up for the underdog. Although I was homeless, because I was homeless, most of these women who called everybody that they could when they were in an abusive situation, like, hey man, could you help me move? Could you help me move? Well, I can help you on Saturday. Or no, I'm sorry, I gotta go to work. But with me, it was like, hey Sean, my boyfriend beat me up last night. He's in jail, but his mom's going to post his bail right now. It'd take him probably an hour or an hour and a half to get here. Will you help me? And yes, I can do that. Yes, I can show up. And so then I stopped designing stuff. I stopped designing better rifles for people like Zach Metcalf. And I stopped designing anything of the weapon sort. And I only designed things of the non weapon sort. Now, I did jot down a lot of stuff that does come from firearms. I still love the mechanics of them. Plus, there's something that's small enough that when you get to work on them, it's not like you need $40 million worth of equipment. You don't need a $20,000 shop and $120,000 worth of shop equipment. You don't need a hydraulic lift. You don't need any of that. But do you know it's something that's just as cool and just as complicated and roughly the same size and weight? I mean, sure, they're bulkier overall, but about the same height as a lot of firearms and about the same weight, you know. It's a clock. Clocks. Clocks are a lot of fun. A lot of people they get the gun bug because they want a gunsmith. They don't even know why they're addicted to it. They're just addicted to it. And for some people, they don't know why they want to build a ship. They don't know why they love building ships. They just know that they love it. And a lot of that has to do with their special interests because we all have them. That's not just an autistic thing. It is primarily an autistic term, but that's your hobbies. What do you do in your spare time? When I say that I passed out blankets for a living, that's true. Working I did as a hobby. I love working. I hate it now. It fucking hurts. And it's also a fucking affront to my pride when I'm not able to do something, especially when I'm being berated and chastised because I'm not able to do something that I told somebody I wasn't able to do to begin with. These police officers keep on pressuring me and bullying me and pressuring me and bullying me to do what it is that they want. And when I do what it is that they want, they don't do anything. Or it harms me further because I did what they wanted. So are these cops helping me? Why are they giving me advice that people are harming me over? It'd be nice if someone cared about me enough to figure out a way to protect me without anyone else being here. I'm trying the camera and recording thing. A lot of people don't want to be recorded. They think I'm a terrible person if I record them. I'm like, hey, I'm not recording all of these things because I'm trying to get you arrested for fucking pot. I'm wearing these fucking things and recording these situations when it is in regards to the situation with Natalie and the abuse that I have had to endure for the last 4 years as a result of Natalie and her family and her friends, who, by the way, I have already proven were on drugs. People said, hey, you slandered her name. No, I didn't. She was on fucking heroin, wasn't she? Well, you had no right to tell people that. Shit, she had no right to lie and say that I fucking stalked her. Her sister had no right to lie and say that I had threatened her and her family in Virginia. Maddie Boa had no right to lie and run around pretending like I just wanted to molest some little girl who is actually a fucking an adult. And then you guys say, oh no, but really, mentally, she was just a little girl. She was mentally just a little girl. I want you to listen to that. No charges should be brought against Natalie Bollinger for the terrible things that are illegal, but they're only illegal if someone cares enough to look. No one's going to look when she's beautiful, as people type, or she's cute, or she is so fucking hot. Yeah, if that's what's important to you, she's got a twin sister who's still alive. She's strung out on fucking heroin too, and probably meth, and keeps making a lot of really bad decisions that every time she makes, I get my life threatened. You want her, you can fucking have her. Natalie was the better human being of the two. Her family and her actual predators bullied her into not doing the adult thing. And they did not do the adult thing. The only person who was trying to get the adult thing done was me. And I took enough cursing and name calling and pushing and shoving and people threatening to kill me and my fucking family that I finally fucking cursed back. Holy hell, I must be Satan for cursing after going through all that for months and months and months. You're a stalker. I'm asking you to fucking knock the shit off. Tell these people the truth so they will stop fucking hurting me. Tell these people the truth so I can see my loved ones without being abused as if I'm a child molester or a rapist. When I was 18, I was considered an adult legally. When I broke the law because I screamed at someone who wouldn't leave me the fuck alone, someone who was harassing me in person and fucking with me and bullying me in person, and I yelled at them, yes, I did disturb the peace. Flicking on and off the lights wasn't disturbing anybody else in the house. I was the only person in the room. This dude kept on coming up and flipping it on and off from the fucking outside. Thought it was fucking hilarious. And when I screamed at the top of my lungs, knock the fuck off, yeah, I got arrested for disturbing the peace. And then I was there. They literally went from, I went in for a court date. My court date was only supposed to be an emancipation. It's actually, it was supposed to be my court date for the disturbing the peace, but they decided when we were at court that they were going to do something that they hadn't allowed me to do before. I wanted to become legally emancipated from my parents so that I didn't have to jump through all these goddamn hoops. But they told me there was no emancipation in Nebraska. You're a child until you're 19 here. But then, right before my court, we begin court, and they, instead of speaking on my case, my guardian ad litem literally goes into the room, and her and Craig Odell and the other fucking asshats, listen to this. They asked for me to be legally emancipated. So the judge legally emancipated me at their request, and they left the room, and then they charged me as an adult. Ain't that some fucking trickery right there? So I started off my adult life with a record, and literally, I should have been charged under Nebraska state law as a minor because of the care that I was under, because I was denied the rights of an adult. I was denied the rights of an adult. I was in a child care facility, basically, and I was already 18 years of age. I was an adult as far as most of the nation is concerned, but not in Nebraska under Nebraska law. So they denied me my rights because I was still a child, and then they made me an adult so that something that happened while I was still technically a child, they could throw onto my permanent record to start off my, hey, thank you very much. That is such a wonderful gift. By the way, your breach of protocol was illegal, assholes. By the way, the officer who arrested me that night, his name was Adam Frericks, and he was a rookie. He said I was the most respectful person he'd ever arrested. And guess who the sheriff of Cheyenne County is right now? Adam Frericks. But also, guess what? He's related to Miss Jerry. That's right. So now it's a, how can I go to the sheriff of Cheyenne County when he is related to one of the people who has committed predatory acts towards me? He's got the same last name as her children, two of them anyway, Tyler Frericks and Jenny Frericks, who are now adults, by the way. When I met them, I believe that Tyler was 11 and Jenny was 9, and I could be wrong about that. Jenny is a hell of an artist, a hell of a portrait artist. Where did she learn that portrait artist stuff from? She learned that from her mom. And where did her mom learn it? That's right, her mom learned it from me. But her mom always had a place to do it. All of her boyfriends were always encouraging her art career and giving her a place to do it. For me, people were encouraging my art career, but they were expecting me to do it under extreme circumstances. And Miss Jerry, because she's pretty, well, now she's getting old and wrinkly, so it's not going to go well for her for long. But she does have the big brown baby seal eyes that are beautiful when you're 80, even. I mean, big brown eyes are always beautiful. They're timeless. That's one of the things about being an artist that you learn. You learn like the color wheel. You learn what colors the eye notices most. You learn what most people consider beautiful, and what most people consider beautiful is, well, weight does change throughout the generations. What is considered healthy and what's not is usually what's most physically attractive. However, the most important thing is symmetry. What is symmetry? Is it the same on this side as it is on this one? The less symmetry there is, the less physically attractive you are. On a horse, they call it conformation. Strange to compare human attractiveness to a horse, isn't it? Some of the thoroughbred racing horses of 100 years ago, or 90 years ago, I suppose. Sorry about that. They're almost unrecognizable from the breed today. A lot of people look at them old racing horses and they go, that's a quarter horse? That is an ugly horse. But back when that horse was running, back in its heyday, somebody looked at that horse and went, that horse is beautiful. But when you're talking about conformation, you're not talking about its ability to win that race. You're talking about its ability to look beautiful. A horse with good conformation, same on the left as on the right. That's a good solid show horse. A good solid breed standard. And that's what each generation spends their entire lives striving because they want to breed with the equal symmetry. Odd, isn't it? All comes down to mathematics by the power of two. If you got one eye that's a little bit higher than the other, you start looking a little Quasimodo-ish. And the more offset there is, the weirder you look. When you got one ear that's down here and one ear that's up here, and there's a lot of people that when they notice that on themselves, they're overly critical of it. Because some of those flaws are just a little bit off. Or some of them, for the shape of your face, they're not too much off, but, there's parts that you don't like. And guys have parts that they don't like, but we don't really tend to obsess about them. I've known a lot of women in my life who will stand in front of a mirror with the door open, talking about an ugly part of their face that's not ugly for hours, at points in time crying, bawling their eyes out, wanting, I don't know what, they want me to confirm that that part of their body is ugly. And I'm like, it's not. Don't lie to me. Don't lie to me. It makes me so ugly. I'm like, holy shit. Oh my God. Oh my God. How can you reason with someone who is like that? If you're going through that much fucking anxiety to impress the dude, he's not fucking worth it. Yeah, I've said that. Just because you do evil shit to me doesn't mean I stop loving you or stop caring. Just because my little brother is a fucking child molester, and I do believe that he should be fucking locked up because he's got a long history of being a fucking sexual deviant, I do still love him, despite the fact that my mom rewarded my predators and harmed me so many times in my life and got away with it, just like any drug addict, you know. And y'all tell me I gotta forgive her, it was the drugs, it was the drugs. Well, I left because of that. Yes, I got that it was the drugs. I left because of it. And then people peer pressured me, hey, you know what? You need to talk to your mom. You need to talk to your mom. Hey, you know what? Don't you love your mom? Hey, dude, you need to forgive your mom. You have no idea how much fucked up shit my mother did. None. And people don't want to hear it. They just want to tell me that I have to forgive her and try to reconcile it. But what happens every time I try to do that? My mom fucking rips me off and fucking tries to do something fucked up to cover it up. Same thing she did to Eric growing up. She did the same to Tara and Michael. My mom, as far as I am aware, is the only person that I know who all four of her offspring have been locked up for her crimes. Holy shit for that one, right? I bought a full pack of cigarettes. It's 11:29. I bought this thing at around 6 o'clock. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. I'm over halfway through it. Obviously, I got a lot of anxiety right now. Obviously, I'm smoking a lot. I'm talking a lot. But that's what happens when I listen to people talk to me about their problems. even problems with people that I got problems with. And I listen to them for hours. But when I try to say something, I'm told I don't care. I don't care. Well, see, equality, that's what we don't have. We don't have an equal friendship or an equal relationship. You expect me to listen and you talk incessantly. But if I talk, you say you don't care. That doesn't help me at all, and that doesn't make me feel welcome. Then there's the fact that you're able to do a lot of things that I'm not able to do. And when you ask for my help, you kind of expect it. You've made that clear by snapping at me a few times when I didn't do what you expected of me. And the worst part about snapping at me, and I'm talking about somebody here in town, worst part about them snapping at me is that they didn't snap at me over doing something wrong. See, he wanted his boat painted, and that was the first thing we were going to do was put some sealing on his boat. And I was totally down with that, and it did eventually get done. But then every time that I went over there and set aside to do it, he was telling me, oh, well, I got to get the sealing for it. I had to wait a while for that. And then he was telling me, oh, well, I don't really feel like it. Let's do it tomorrow. And then he had other projects that he wanted done. And that's the part that really bugged me about it is that when he snapped at me because I hadn't done what I had said that I would do at the very start, he snapped at me and, said that basically tried to insinuate that I had done nothing at all. Now, he did realize his mistake and he did apologize for it later, but he snapped at me and that does shut me down. That makes me afraid that he'll do it again. And he has done that again. He's repeated that, but he's also repeated the apology, the admitting that he was wrong. But still, when I try to speak, it's the I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. When he wants help, he can't invest an hour and a half into helping me go through paperwork or helping me go through evidence because he doesn't care. But he expects me to care when he has a job that he wants to go do and he needs help with it. It hurts me to get up and get in and out of the truck. It doesn't hurt me to get in and out of the fucking little vehicle as much. But getting in and out of his truck is not an easy thing for me to do, and it does hurt like a son of a bitch. But I gotta watch the gauges so it don't overheat. The problem isn't that he's a bad person. The problem is that he's not making the connection, and he's also not realizing how much time he is spending complaining about somebody who, after 30 minutes of complaining, he says, but, I don't mind so much. And then another 30 minutes of complaining about that person again. So I go in and help him for a couple hours, three or four times a week now, apparently. I'm not really getting paid for it, but I'm kind of getting perks. I get lunch, or he did give me $20. That was nice. And he often wants to take stuff out and trade, which is also nice. It makes it so that I don't have to spend a bunch of money I don't have, but also he's wanting to. Here's the reason that he's been having an anxiety attack about money recently. He wants to go see his daughters. He misses them. He loves them, and he's tired of all the bullshit that has been coming to his house lately due to alcoholics. He just wants to get the fuck out of here. He wants to get the hell away from the drama. And I understand that. And he's been planning on doing this for a while. COVID has just fucked everything up. And he's got to be super stressed because as soon as he gets there, he's going to have to take a COVID test, which is apparently painful for the 4-day test, or whatever, and then he's got to be quarantined for 14 days before he's even allowed to go see his kids, and they're adults, but that's not the point. The point is that everybody's got their own shit that's going on, and sometimes when you are so stressed and you've got all of that shit on your plate, you're not able to stop and think about what somebody else is necessarily going through. You might be really agitated and you're just fucking snapping because you're fucking agitated, and you do eventually make the connection that yeah, you probably just snapped at the wrong person. A lot of these people just didn't want to admit it. I admitted when I fucked up. I admitted when I got stuff wrong. But I also told you when people fucking lied to me. When I got shit wrong because of the way that other people were fucking manipulating the goddamn situation. Any of you guys with half a fucking brain would look at the evidence, just the evidence that I have on this fucking computer, and you'd go through it and you'd go, holy fucking shit, dude, these people belong in prison. Duh. I know. But when you're called mentally ill, you have to have somebody else go in with you. You're welcome for this hour and 21-minute fucking ramble about going from making designs for stuff to hurt people to designing stuff to stop people from hurting each other, which is what I do now. And part of the way that I am trying to show you is that the more self-sustaining that you are, the better off you'll be. Americans are entirely too dependent upon government entities, and that entraps everyone. I'm pretty tired. My headache is starting to subside, but my fucking ear hurts like a motherfucker. I'm wanting to fucking jab something in there and dig out whatever is in there, and the problem is that it's agitated nerves, so there's nothing to scratch out. By morning, there'll be a whole bunch of real nasty earwax, and I'll put my fingers over my nose and as hard as I can until I feel it pop, and then I'll dig it out with a Q-tip that says, do not stick it in your ear. Good night and be safe. I want to say thank you to Zach Metcalf and Owen Johnson and also Dylan Bauer and his wife. Thank you. By the way, his wife was never a bully. I suppose I should probably put in there that little tidbit. I should also add in there that Owen Johnson was never a bully to me either.